What if I told you that one of the most iconic teams in Formula One is on the verge of a strategic collapse just before one of the most demanding circuits in the calendar? Can Ferrari survive the Singapore GP, or are we witnessing the beginning of the end of the Vasseur era? Fred Vasseur is not simply worried. He is immersed in a storm that threatens to devour everything he has tried to build in Ferrari since his arrival. Although the renewal of his contract seemed to confirm the confidence of the high controls in his management, he speaks another language. The Singapore GP approaches, and with it, a fire test that could mark the turning point of all its management. The Marina Bay urban circuit is not just one more stop on the calendar. It is an integral challenge, one that requires technical excellence, mental resistance, strategic precision, and absolute cohesion at all levels of the team. For Ferrari, who arrives at the Singapore Grand Prix with visible cracks in its structure, this route represents much more than a race. It is, in effect, a turning point, the opportunity to demonstrate that accumulated errors and doubts so far this season can be reversed, or the perfect scenario for everything to be crumbled. The Singapore track is unique. Its design requires very high aerodynamic load, great traction in slow curve outputs, and an exceptional thermal control of brakes and tires, in extreme heat conditions and suffocating humidity. There are 19 chain curves, all techniques which punish the slightest slip. It is one of safety cars' most likely circuits due to its closed and urban character, and that means that decision-making on the wall must be immediate and without margin of error. Just the type of pressure that Ferrari has not handled well in recent years. And yet, Singapore also offers a small light of hope for Maranello. Technically, this is a route where historically they have given better than in other power tracks. An extremely efficient car is not needed in line, but one that behaves well in short and braking stability. That's where SF25 could find oxygen. Its architecture, although criticized for its general inconsistency, has demonstrated some potential in low-speed and high-load circuits, where it is not necessary to deal with multiple types of curve. This linearity of the layout can facilitate the tuning, which would be vital for a team that has been fighting with the balance of the car throughout the season. Leclerc has been very clear about it. In pre-season, she pointed out that Marina Bay was one of the few places where she really believed that Ferrari could fight for a victory. He did not say it for enthusiasm, but for the knowledge of the car. In heat conditions and in constant rhythm circuits, the SF25 has shown better adaptability than in places with steep temperature or aerodynamic load transitions. After Baku's disaster, marked by a colder climate and the difficulty of heating tires, Leclerc insisted that Singapore heat could be a differential factor. That trust, however, is now facing the harsh reality of the moment that the Scuderia lives. Because it is not enough for the car to have the potential. It is necessary that the whole team execute it, and that includes engineers, pit wall, strategists, pilots, and above all, Vasseur. Marina Bay demands unit. There is no space for radio discussions or for technical contradictions or for overflowing egos. Any mistake, however small, will be amplified in an environment where every millimeter and every second count. A badly executed stop, a poorly transmitted order, or a disconnection between pilot and engineer, to throw a whole weekend of preparation. In addition, the psychological challenge in Singapore is huge. It is a night race with a duration close to 2 hours, where the concentration must be constant. Fatigue accumulates quickly and impulsive decisions usually have disastrous consequences. A team like Ferrari, which has already shown emotional fragility during critical sessions, must find in itself an internal strength that has not exhibited so far in the championship. That is why this Grand Prix is not just one more career. It is a thermometer, an evaluation, and a sentence. If Ferrari fails here, the following will not be a miraculous comeback, but a progressive loss of credibility and technical authority against his rivals and in front of his own fans. If it is right, I could recover the narrative and begin to rebuild what seems to be falling apart. Singapore ultimately decides everything. Fred Vasseur is not sailing a simple sports performance temporal. He is in charge of an institution that does not compete only against his rivals on the track, but also against his own legacy. Ferrari is synonymous with history, legends, titles, passion. But for almost 2 decades, it is also synonymous with disappointment. That combination of greatness and frustration weighs like a slab on the shoulders of any manager who dares to take the helm in Maranello. And now that historical pressure falls completely on Vasseur. The most disturbing thing about this context is that there is no clear external threat that justifies the downturn. It is not that Red Bull has dominated again, or that Mercedes has found an unbeatable car. McLaren, yes, has made a tremendous qualitative leap. But beyond that, the 2025 championship is much more open than usual. Just for that, Ferrari's inability to capitalize that opportunity is so painful and so revealing. It is not about losing against a superior rival, but about being out of the conversation for their own merits. The situation becomes even more tense when it is observed that Ferrari, so far, is the only team of those considered top that has not achieved a victory. This data by itself should turn on all alarms. Not because a victory is everything, but because in such a competitive environment, not winning inevitably means losing ground on all fronts: technical, media, commercial, and emotional. The sponsors get impatient, the Italian press begins to demand heads, and the fans as loyal as fierce looks at the past in search of guilty. In addition, there is another factor that amplifies the pressure on Vasseur: the contract of its pilots. Both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton are very high-profile figures. They are potential champions with legitimate ambitions of title, and both have made it clear that they are not in Ferrari to finish quarters or fifths. Leclerc has been waiting for the team for years to give it a winning machinery. Hamilton, meanwhile, arrived with the promise to close his career with a last legendary deed. If this promise is broken, not only the project is fractured, Vasseur's own leadership is also weakened, which was the one who bet on that duo as a pillar of the red resurgence. In Ferrari, there is no margin for sustained mediocrity. The demand is immediate and brutal. Each season without results feeds a decline narrative that is increasingly difficult to reverse. And in this context, Singapore's GP does not represent only one opportunity to add points. It is a credibility test. A bad result will not be read as a technical setback or a simple bad streak. He will be interpreted as the failure of a project that promised to return the glory to Maranello and that, on the other hand, remains entangled in his old vices. All this happens under the shadow of a name that says everything: Ferrari. Because no other team on the grill loads with a comparable mythology. No other team has millions of eyes observing each movement, each error, every gesture of frustration in the box. When Ferrari suffers, the noise is deafening. And when Ferrari sinks, he does it in view of the entire world. That is why Vasseur not only faces the challenge of fixing a car or improving a strategy. He is dealing with the possibility of becoming another name in the long list of leaders who failed to fulfill the eternal promise to return Ferrari to the top. Singapore can be the first step to reverse that story. Or it can become the chapter confirming that, once again, Ferrari has fallen short in front of his own legend. Ferrari arrives at the Singapore Grand Prix with an existential question about the table. It is no longer just about how to improve the car or refine the strategy. The real question is much deeper. What kind of team do you want to be Ferrari from this moment? Because what happens in Marina Bay can completely redirect the course of his season, but also of his competitive identity. The Italian team is located at a crossroads. The SF25 technical project is far from an absolute failure, but it has not met the expectations that were after a promising 2024. The car has strengths, but also an accumulation of structural weaknesses that have been exposed again and again in real career conditions. In a championship where the margins between excellence and mediocrity are microscopic, that lack of consistency is not forgiven. What is needed now is not a specific technical solution. What Ferrari needs is a declaration of intentions. A clear message, both for his rivals and for himself, that he is still a real contender. Singapore represents the best opportunity to cast that message, because it is a circuit where performance depends less on pure and more power on the perfect execution in all areas of the team. It is a scenario that rewards coordination, adaptation, strategic intelligence, and precision in career management. Just the aspects in which Ferrari has faltered. Can Vasseur recover control of the costumes? Can you impose a management model that works for such a demanding and competitive pilots? Can the team of external pressures shield the narrative from within? These are urgent questions that can only be answered with facts, not with communications or promises. And the first concrete event has a date and place: October 5th, Marina Bay. Therefore, this moment cannot be treated as a simple bump in the way. It is a bifurcation. A unique opportunity to reset the season and, with it, the general perception of the current state of the team. The talent is there. History too. The question is whether there is internal conviction to use both as resurgence tools instead of anchors that drag the equipment towards the bottom. Ferrari does not need a miraculous victory in Singapore. You need a performance that inspires confidence. To show cohesion, sense of direction, realistic ambition, and Fischer execution. If they achieve that, the result will be almost anecdotal. But if they fail, not only a race will be lost. Time will be lost, credibility, and perhaps the most important thing, the opportunity to redeem when there is still season to dispute.